Hello, everyone. Mayor Phil Kramer. Hope you are well. Hope you are staying well and staying safe. We are live now from Franklin, others in Somerset County, and Dr. O'Valley's from other parts of New Jersey now. We have with us tonight, of course, Michael Steinbrook, who's been producing this, and we are indebted to him for all he's done. The township manager, our new public safety director, Quavella Spruill, our relatively new because he's a young man, Councilman Will Gualtieri, and one of our newest councilmen, Councilman Ram Ambersan. I'll get it yet. And then, of course, Dr. O'Valley is with us, our superintendent, and Joe DeMarco, who lives in Somerset County and recently recovered from COVID-19. We thought we'd hear a bit from him. And then, of course, our press, Malik Lyons from Tapped Into, and the dynamic duo of Bill Bowman and PJ Parker from the Franklin Reporter and Advocate. I thought I would start things off. The two big things to talk about, of course, are the tax grace period and the parks. So the tax grace period, today is Thursday, so it was 2 nights ago, Franklin Council, with the permission given by the executive order of the governor, passed a resolution that will extend the grace period for the May taxes. So normally it goes to May 10th. It will now go to June 1st. So if you pay by June 1st, close of business 4:30 by June 1st, then you will not pay any penalty for not paying on May. You will not be considered late. As I said, normally that's May 10th. I have to tell you, Mr. Vornlocker and I were on a call today about the county, and many towns were bemoaning the fact that they just don't have enough money in the reserve to do that, because despite that we are allowing you to pay late, we still have to pay our bills on time. Franklin has been steadfast with sturdy finances, and we have the ability to delay payments by 20 days and still be able to make our payments. So we're very gratified to be able to do that. We hope that helps people out in these very troubling times. The next issue are the parks, and I'm going to let the manager talk about the actual rules of the parks, but the parks will be opening at 6 o'clock on May 2nd, unless there's a park or two, maybe we'll have a different opening time. I'll leave that to him. But the governor decided that he was going to open the parks at that time. And our feeling was that, and I put this up on my Facebook page, for those of you who watch Star Trek, it's kind of a Kobayashi Maru. I won't go into the details of that, but the two problems were if the state parks are open and we don't open our parks, then anyone who wants to go to a park is going to go to a state park. And that means more people in fewer parks, and that increases the interaction between people, and that can increase the infection rate. I am concerned about the infection rate, and when we open our parks, I'm concerned about the infection rate there. But if we open, the more parks we open, the more spread out people will be, and I thought that was the better side of the coin to land on. So that's why we went that way. I will not comment on whether the governor made the right decision or not, but what I will say is I certainly hope so. The doubling times are going up. We're going in the right direction. I just hope this doesn't stop that. So, Mr. Manager, do you want to get into some details?
Sure. So our emergency declaration was amended today to reopen the parks effective sunrise Saturday morning. All of the restrictions and permissions mirror what those are of the state parks as detailed in the executive order. That is mandated by the executive order, that those things that are permitted and prohibited in a park must mirror the state park prohibitions and permissions. So it wasn't as if we were able to pick and choose the things we want to allow people to do. If we were going to reopen our parks, the directive from the executive order was that we had to follow the same rules that they're following. So basically, it amounts to passive recreation activities are permitted, specifically fishing, hiking, walking, running or jogging, biking, birding, and in one of our open space properties, in particular, the John Clyde Native Grassland Preserve in Griggstown, if you have a permit at this time to horseback ride, you are able to do that at that particular park and only that park. Those things that are prohibited are use of the picnic areas, playgrounds, exercise stations and equipment, swimming, the pavilions, the restrooms, and any other buildings or facilities, including but not limited to visitor centers, interpretive centers, and interior of our historic sites are all closed. There is no organized or contact activities or sports allowed. So there, I know I've heard questions already about things like tennis. Passive recreation defined by those activities I've earlier stated. No activities such as any sporting events, no soccer, no basketball, no football, no tennis. Passive recreation. All right. The wearing of masks is encouraged in all of our parks by all of the people utilizing the parks, unless there's some medical reason not to. The parking in some of our parks will be limited. The order from the governor limits the parking lots to 50%. Now, some of our parks or our open space properties have very, very small parking areas for very, very large expanses of land. When there are 3 parking spaces for 200 acres, we don't anticipate that there will be 50% parking there. But our larger parks, such as Middlebush Park and Inman Park, will have parking lots closed. So the lots that are open will be available. The lots that are closed will be barricaded off and will not be able to be used. That's the rules. And then my one request, and I'm sure it's the mayor's as well, is social distancing and not congregating in groups must be the rule, must be the mandate, must be what every single person who utilizes any of these recreational facilities, whether it be our park, the county park, Colonial Park in particular, or the state parks. Because I can hazard a guess, and I think my guess is correct, that if this becomes an issue locally or at the county or state level, where people begin to amass in large groups or fail to abide by the social distancing guidelines, that parks will be closed again. And I think that, you know, there's certainly an advantage to a whole lot of people to have these parks available to them. And I would just ask that everybody use common sense and follow the guidelines and make it so that everyone can enjoy them and do it safely and not put it in jeopardy. That about cover it, Mayor?
That about covers it. The rules of Colonial Park. Colonial Park is a county park, so we don't control it, but it is obviously in Franklin. So a lot of people from Franklin go there. They are going to regulate the 50% parking by having personnel at every entrance, and I assume they're going to be talking by walkie-talkies or cell phones, I guess. And they are going to be metering cars going in and out, not as one car goes in or goes out, they'll let one car in. They said they're going to do it in lots of 25, but that's how they're going to limit them. So different parks are going to use different rules. Golf clubs are open. The county golf clubs are open, but call them. It's by reservation only. There's restricted numbers there. So don't just show up with your clubs and expect to go. That's not going to happen. I guess normally that doesn't happen anyway.
Can't play through, I guess.
Yeah.
It might happen on a weekday, but it sure won't happen on a beautiful Saturday morning.
Yeah. So, okay. So I think that's the updates for what's going on with the town. Councilman Galtieri, what did you want to update us with?
Yep. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you. As I mentioned on Tuesday, we continue to have more requests. So again, rhrfranklin.org. It's the Residents Helping Residents. A sincere shout out to the volunteers that have been stepping up and really helping the community. It's greatly appreciated. They've been helping to also deliver food bank packages now to residents at risk also. So a big shout out to them, to everybody, and thank you for all you're doing. As a reminder, from Tuesday, as I said, virtual food drive for the food bank, but we are still collecting non-perishable items at the senior center at 505 Demont Lane, as well as any masks, non-medical grade masks that could be donated to help protect the employees at the food bank, as well as the volunteers at the Salt Foundation distribution. So any donations there, again, those can be dropped off at the senior center as well, and we'll help get it to the right organization. So that's all I have right now, Mr. Mayor. But I cannot say thank you enough to our volunteers, and also to the food bank workers and Salt Foundation and the food pantry at Zarephath for all they're doing to make sure the community can continue to be fed throughout this time.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Amberson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a couple of quick initiatives that I want to discuss with the community. One is about supporting the food bank, along with Councilman Galtieri. We have been working on several fundraising activities on one-on-one basis, but then we came up with this idea to do a virtual music concert to kind of get all the community, especially the South Asian community, involved in our township activities. So we have I have a friend who runs a music group. They are going to sing in Indian multi-languages. In India, there are 17 official languages. So we can't sing in all those languages, but at least 4 or 5 languages, including Bollywood songs. They are going to perform for us next Saturday, not this week, May 9th at 7 p.m. They're going to do a performance on Facebook Live on the Franklin Food Bank website, not a website, the Facebook. And it would be a fantastic event, we think. A lot of young artists that are practicing as we speak, and they're going to be performing to support the Franklin Food Bank fund drive. I'm happy to announce that Bridge Development Partners, who are building the Amazon warehouse in our township, has committed to donate $5,000 for the event. That is a great start for the fundraise, and we are hoping that a lot of people will listen to the music and open their hearts and open their wallets for the good cause that the food bank is doing. As you know, food bank is seeing more than 65% increase in the traffic. Number of families served has exceeded, and it's close to 1,250 around that, which is a significant increase. And if the unemployment still continues to go up, I think right now the state it's at 900,000 people are claiming unemployment. If it keeps going up, that demand is going to continue to increase, and every dollar that they raise is going directly to support our neighbors, and we are happy to bring that program over. And that's the first one. And the second one is related to face masks. I've been approached by a nonprofit organization of Indian origin again. It is called Seva International Incorporated, 501c3 nonprofits, and they have volunteers all over the country, so including our state and our township. There are volunteer groups that have been making cloth masks for primarily the hospitals. So far, thousands of them have been made by people at home, and the Seva International donates or funds the purchase of the materials, and volunteer seamstresses and people stitch them and drop it off at the hospitals. So they approached me yesterday and offered to extend the courtesy of donating their homemade cloth face mask to people in our community. Obviously, they would like to make a bunch of them, give it to a designated person in a community. For example, maybe a church or a temple or a food bank. So they have given us a form to fill in to request the face masks, so which I can share it to any group leaders in such organizations. If they would contact me, I'm going to reach out to the newspapers and maybe the township, and to collect such names so that they can consolidate the face mask request. Even 100, 200, 500, doesn't matter. I think the organization is able to supply them. These are good, reusable, multi-layered, pocketed face masks that they are sewing for us. And I wanted to make that announcement as well. And those are two initiatives, Mayor. That's all I've got for today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilman, excuse me, Phil. Councilman, I asked for the advertisement that you have to be put up on the Facebook feed for the call, and I'll also add it to the Franklin Direct page and the mayor's Facebook page as well.
That'll be terrific. Appreciate that.
So now, for the first time, I think, in public, our new public safety director, Covella Spruill. I don't think she has in particular COVID-19 news, but she is new to our town, very important person who is going to be at the top of our police force, and we thought people would be interested in meeting her. Director Spruill, take it away.
Hi, Mayor. Hi, everyone. So I am excited about beginning my journey with the Franklin Police Department, and the men and women there, they've embraced me. I know everyone says, yeah, you're being so optimistic, but guess what? That is what I'm seeing. That is what I'm receiving. I think everyone is ready for a change and ready to do something different and see what I'm all about. I know you said I had nothing to add to COVID-19, but this is a strange time to come into any new department because it is all about COVID-19, quite frankly, at least the first couple hours of the day, between the conference calls, and we're talking about the number of residents, and we're talking about providing services, and we're talking about staying healthy and well in the police department and doing things to sanitize the police department and the municipal complex. So we are actively engaged in the COVID-19 elements of our government right now. So, but, I'm looking forward to a lot of things. I want to look at diversity, leadership development, succession planning, get out in the community. It's really hard right now, and especially for me, because I like to be out there. I like to, meet the different clergy and citizens and the different events and meetings. But right now it's all about Zoom. So, I do it the way we do it right now, but it's fine. We're even having a department-wide meeting with all the police officers on Zoom next week. So that should be interesting.
Excellent.
Okay, great.
Does the press have any questions for our director?
No, I just have one question to reiterate. I believe what has been said in the past regarding enforcement of social distancing in the parks. What would be the best way for a public citizen to do this? Like if they see someone that may not be doing what they're supposed to in the park, so we don't have a few people that don't follow the rules ruin it for others.
So we talked about that, and the best approach that we're going to take right now is just warning citizens, and we're going to work with the fire department to mobilize a drone to talk to citizens in the park if we, initially see it, just so that, our police department, we're not becoming, our families, ourselves, we know how hard it is to stay inside. We get it. We know, people, they want fresh air, but we have to be responsible about it so that we don't increase our numbers. From what I've seen, Somerset County has been very fortunate that the numbers are not as high, but just one more, we want to see those numbers go down and, in the negative direction. So we're going to try and make sure that citizens do what they do, and we're going to try not to be contentious about it. But if they call the non-emergency number, I think that's the best thing for them to do. And, the officers, they will be in the area. We know that the parks are going to be a hot spot. We will be patrolling. I talked to patrol about that. They know this weekend when the weather's nice. We just want to make sure people do what they have to do. And it's for their health and safety. We're not trying to arrest anyone. We really are not. That is not what it's about. It's just about trying to make sure it's a reminder, because it is a new way of life. And sometimes we all forget. I myself, I was in a store and, the marks on the floor, and a young lady reminded me, like, you have to stand behind that line. But again, it's a new way, and every place we go is different. So that's what we want to do. Just reminders, remind people of why we're doing it also.
Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Bill.
Director, are you saying there will not be any arrests? You're just going to be doing warnings?
So that is our plan. We're optimistic. We do not want to make arrests. No, we want to remind citizens that, for their health and safety and for the health and safety of our other citizens who are more vulnerable to this virus, that, let's keep our social distance. Let's not congregate. There have been parking summonses issued to people who were in the park before and they weren't supposed to. So it's really a summons, but again, that's not our objective.
Okay. Just in general, and by the way, welcome to Franklin Township.
Thank you, sir.
General, why did you think you wanted to come here?
So I live 4 miles away. I'm very familiar with Franklin. I have friends here. I shop here. I am in the community. I volunteer for the New Jersey Orators, which is based out of Franklin Middle School. And quite frankly, I think I can add a different perspective to the Franklin Police Department. And I did it in Highland Park. And when I saw the opportunity in Franklin, actually people approached me. They said, we saw what you did in Highland Park. Maybe you should think about Franklin. And I did a deeper dive and I applied. And I came to Franklin just to initiate change. Sometimes that's what people need. They need a different person. They need things to look different, shake things up a bit.
How are you shaking things up?
I think just looking at everything is a shakeup. It's kind of like spring cleaning, let's just dust everything off. I'm sure the town manager will tell you that, I'm looking to refresh things, give things a facelift. Um, it's totally different. I'm from a place, and not just where I work, but in my life and in my family where, we just say, let's start from the top. And I think my thinking with my engineering degree makes me a little methodical. I'm not quite sure the officers know where I'm coming from right now. They're like, she's just all over the place. She's looking at everything. But I'm just analyzing and scoping things out about which direction we want to go. And quite frankly, this time it's helped that we're on a modified schedule because things are a little quieter in the building, and it gives you time to think. And, we're social distancing, so that helps you do things. But I'm just looking at everything. Everything is being reviewed and anything subject to change. But the good things that they're doing, I will keep in place also.
So
Don't let Mr. Bowman get to you. After
What-
the governor announced that he was opening the parks, he gave me all of 30 seconds before he sent me a text saying, is Franklin opening their parks? Bill, next time, please give me a minute and a half to think about it.
It's okay.
gold. You mentioned there, you wanted to keep some of the good things. Can you tick off a couple of those good things?
So I will tell you this right now. The men and women, they are hardworking. They're coming to work, and they're very receptive to the things that I want to do. That's the first step. Okay. I have never, and of course you would say you're the director, they would not, but no one has ever given me any inkling that, they don't want to do something. Everyone's receptive to it. And I think that's just it, open-minded. They are looking to do different things. I have some young people and some people in the department who've been there for a while. We can mesh those experiences with the young people. So those are the good things. You have experience, but you have young people who want to do things, say on Facebook or Instagram, or integrate with the community, different youth activities. Within our first couple of days, we were applying for a grant. So, they're excited. We're moving along, trust me.
So you're a two-time trailblazer.
You said I'm a what?
A two-time trailblazer.
Two-time.
Prosecutor's office and now here in Franklin. Do you think about that at all?
You know what? It's brought to my attention, but I think the way I am, I'm humble about it. And it's just who I was born to be. I was sitting on the sidelines for 2 years. And quite frankly, I could say I was enjoying it, but my family will disagree that I was on the sidelines because I was still involved in other community activities. But it's who I am. I don't seek it, it just happens.
I see. Okay. And I kind of know the answer to this question, but is there anything you can tell us about the I guess the homicide that was investigated?
It is being handled by the prosecutor's office, and there is a press release that was released this afternoon, and that's all we can say about it.
All right. Well, thanks very much. I look forward to many more conversations with you.
Right.
I'm sure.
Malik, did you have any other questions for the director before we move on?
Yeah, just one real question. Are we still seeing a downward trend in terms of different types of crimes like burglaries and things of that nature in the community, barring what happened yesterday?
So during COVID, there has been a downward trend in crime during this time. And everyone's indoors. Well, not everyone, pretty much everyone's indoors. So even some communities say they've seen an uptick in domestic violence. We have not. So I think that, for the most part, I think everyone's focusing on what needs to be focused on right now, and that's staying healthy.
Ms. Parker, did you have any questions? You're muted. PJ, you're muted.
Okay.
Try now, PJ.
There she goes.
You can see my lips moving, but no sound.
We-
I want to welcome you. You seem like you're very positive, in addition to being a humble woman, very positive, and you have a lovely smile, and I think you're going to be a tremendous asset to our community. One thing I'm just a little concerned about, there seems to be an inconsistent policy in terms of what's acceptable behavior now that the parks are open. No, we don't have to wear masks. Yes, we have to observe social distancing. And now they're going to be drones, but maybe we'll issue citations. Maybe we will enforce what is happening or not happening. I see that can be an issue, and add that to a lot of people in this community who are talking about their rights having been abridged, that the streets were no longer theirs, and it was their right to walk the streets and the trails and enjoy the park. And I'm not seeing a consistent policy here. Is because it's outdoor. Yet we have the drones who are going to be monitoring people's activities, and some will wear masks because they're prudent and because we have all done so. And others will see it as a free-for-all. And I find that a concern. We've just started to see a descent in some of the numbers. And throughout the country, any of the relaxations that have gone on have so far resulted in an uptick of new cases. So again, I don't have an answer here. I'm hoping those in charge have some answers. And it's for me, it's all about consistency. Either we wear masks, observe social distancing, or we don't. And then we are subject to, yes, it's my right not to wear a mask now. Now that I can walk the streets as I choose, well, I don't have to wear a mask. Well, I think we do have to wear the mask. It has been proven, and I think Dr. Mayor Kramer can attest to this fact, that the masks are the prevention, in addition to the social distancing. It has been proven that the masks protect each other. It doesn't protect me from receiving droplets and the contamination, unless somebody is just like breathing directly on this. We're all in this to protect each other as well as ourselves. And yes, I can get very talky. So I would appreciate somebody addressing this.
I'm not sure what the question is. If you want to talk about.
The question is, where's the consistency in the enforcement of protection?
That's not a question for our police director. That's a question for the governor.
General, then question.
That's a question for the governor. The rules are not being made locally.
And the drones? What about the drones?
So I'm going to talk about the drones a little bit, and I'm sure that the public safety director, I think that there's a significant misunderstanding about what the public safety director is talking about utilizing the drones for. We have a fire department that has a drone. The drone, we're exploring the possibility of utilizing the drone for audio purposes to tell people when there's problems with social distancing that they need to separate and they need to not congregate, rather than sending police officers in, which are a valuable resource to do that. Not to use the drone to watch what people are doing, but when a complaint is received about social distancing issues within the park, the drone can be used to alert people that they need to utilize social distancing and those methods. So that's the purpose of it. And I'll let Director Spruill explain further.
Can I there for a second to the.
Go ahead, Director Spruill.
So, and to say, and exactly, the town manager is correct. So the drone is not run by the police department. If we get complaints, and it can be handled with a speaker announcement, it's equivalent to if the fire department drove through with, a megaphone or announcing on their trucks, everyone please maintain social distance 6 inches. So it just taps into resources that we don't have to mobilize. I mean, if the police need to respond to deliver CPR to someone or respond to a burglary or some other issue, the drones could be making announcements versus using those type of resources in the park. So they're not monitoring. If someone calls and makes a complaint, that's our first line to respond to it. And when I say we're not trying to make arrests, it's just like if you're pulled over by the officers, they have the discretion to give you a warning. And if we get complaints about certain things happening, our first recourse is going to be a warning if the cops respond there. So it's a warning, and it's probably another warning, and trying to talk to people about why we're doing this. And let's keep in mind that, you know, our officers, they're human too. So they have to be there and they have to respond. So we want to minimize that contact. And that's another form of social distancing by using the drone. So the drones do not monitor, they're going to be in response to. And it's a plan because that we're thinking about. We have not done it and they're not out circling right now as we speak.
Thank you, Director Sproul. And we're going to have opportunities for more questions for the panel after we get through our other speakers. So I'm going to go to Superintendent John Ravelli from the Franklin Township Public School Systems for an update.
Thanks, Mike. First off, thanks to all our members of our Franklin school community, parents, students, faculty, support staff. They continue to do an amazing job in some very difficult times. Our food service is going well. We are serving approximately 5,000 meals per week at this point. So kudos to our food service director and our entire food service team, continuing to do a great job to meet the needs of our families. We believe, or we have made contact with near 100% of our 7,000 plus families. We have a very short list of families we've not been able to contact. We are working with our local authorities to make sure that we continue our efforts to make contact and get all of our students accounted for. As of tomorrow, we believe that we will be near, if not at 100% of our families connected to the internet. So we've been working very hard to get all of our families connected. So by the end of tomorrow, we believe that we're going to be in a position to say that near 100%, if not 100% of our families will now be connected. I posted a letter on the website yesterday. We blasted a message about that yesterday. Hopefully our families had the opportunity to review that letter. It speaks to some changes in remote learning phase 3. And of course, those changes were informed by a faculty and a parent survey. The parents did a wonderful job responding to the survey, providing the help that we need to design this plane as we're flying it, and our faculty did the same. So we think we've made some improvements. We know that there's further improvements necessary. We'll be surveying again as soon as next week, so that as we design future phases for as long as we're out, we'll continue to make changes based on the needs of our families. So look for that survey, which will get posted early next week, and will definitely influence phase 4 should there be the need for one. I also want to announce a partnership, and our letter announces that partnership. We entered a partnership earlier this week with Rutgers Behavioral Health. So the Rutgers Behavioral Health folks will be working with the district to support the needs of our families, as well as the needs of our faculty, providing resources and in some cases direct counseling to our families. And we look forward to a very positive relationship in a very difficult time. This is a very timely partnership indeed. So they'll be announcing, they being Rutgers Behavioral Health, will be announcing to our community how they plan to roll out their program and what kind of benefit they can bring to our families in the very near future. So stay tuned for that. And that's really it for the schools for now. And of course, we'll answer questions.
Any questions for the super? Okay. Michael, you're muted.
That's my one job. I had one job. I was going to say, do you want to introduce our next guest? But we also have Freehold Director Robinson on as well. But if you want to, I know you have Joe waiting there.
We have Mr. DeMarco, who is a resident of Somerset County, who, well, I'll let him tell the story. I think it was roughly a month ago, as I recall, contracted COVID-19. And I just thought, you know, we see the numbers, and it's more than numbers, it's people, and people do recover. So, Mr. DeMarco, can you tell us what the history was, how you think you got it, what it was like, how you are now?
Well, we'll do that in reverse. So now I'm good, which is, always a great thing to be able to say, right? That you're feeling well. When I got it, it's now one of those dates where you kind of remember. So it was March 20th, right? It's like an event that I think now that date stays with me. And no idea in terms of where or who I may have gotten it or where I contacted it. So what happened was March 20th, got up in the morning, felt a little tired, but nothing unusual. 6 o'clock at night, got a temperature. It was like 99.5. By 7:45, I was in the medical center in Somerville with 103.5 fever, blood oxygen in the low 90s, chills. And they ran all the tests and pretty much told me I had it but I needed a test to confirm it. And the doctor joked at that time, they were so backed up on the test results. He said, hopefully you feel better by the time you get the phone call from us to let you know that, what the result is. And sure as, heck, 8 days later, I felt better. And I got a phone call that afternoon saying, oh, by the way, you tested positive. So that was probably the only ironic part about the whole thing.
How bad did it get?
So I said to someone, the best way to describe it is every other illness I ever had, unless it's something chronic, right, that you constantly battle. But every flu, cold, stomach virus, anything I ever had, it was just one hill, right? You went up the mountain, you felt bad, and then you came back down, and then you were done. This was like a mountain range, right? So you felt bad, you slept 14 hours, you got up, you thought maybe, oh, okay, I feel a little bit better, and it came back. And you went up the hill again and came back. And, every day you had a fever, every day you had the chills. The one story I do tell, which I think puts it into perspective, right? I came home, I called my wife on the way home from the hospital. It was like 12 o'clock at night. And I said, all right, get everything you need out of the bedroom because that's where I'm going to be for the next, several days. And I never left the room for 8 days. But one night, one of my daughters, who's 20, his bedroom's right across from mine. I literally asked her to make sure she got up in the middle of the night and checked on me twice. Because I was, seriously at that point where I was like, I think I might have to go back to the hospital. I couldn't get comfortable, chest pains, difficulty breathing. Best way to describe it, I had a couple coughing fits and it felt like somebody was squeezing the bottom half of your lung. Wincing, eye pain. And that's a weird conversation to have, right? To say to one of your kids, hey, can you do me a favor and just come in the bedroom and check on me, to make sure I sound like I'm okay breathing. And her joke was she came in twice and she found like a broom handle or a stick because she didn't want to get too close. And she was going to poke me if she needed to. And then a couple days later, I felt better. I mean, it kind of just disappeared or didn't come back that day.
Are you able to now just jog and things like that, or where are you?
Yeah, the bad stuff was 8 days, and that seems to be the norm, right? Like on that 8th day, either you get better or you stay worse for another 14 days, right? I mean, that seems to be the pattern, right? It's a bad week, and either it gets better or then it just doesn't, and it gets worse, right? And that's when people wind up in hospitals. The week after that, I just found myself completely fatigued still, right? And then, so by the 3rd week, I felt back to normal, and, I'm like 4.5 weeks now. I wish I could say I was jogging, but I didn't jog before. So, that would be, it'd be great, but but my energy level's fine. I feel fine. I don't have any lingering effects or anything of that nature.
Great. Any members of our press want to ask a question?
I will say one thing, Mayor, if I can, though. The interesting part to note is, when I was dealing with it in my own, cell, my bedroom, your focus is on you. And once I got through that, there were about 12, 14 people that had a quarantine that I came into contact with. And some of them were older than me. Some of them had some medical issues. The thing that bothered me the most after I got past and was functioning was I had this fear of like, oh my God, did I infect somebody else, right? Did I, and that lingered, and in some respects was harder to deal with than the actual disease, right? And I think that's the thing people don't really understand. Like when you talk about social distancing and our responsibility, there is some personal culpability, right? It's not just responsibility in some respects, right? Like you can, if you feel bad or feel sick, you gotta stay home. You gotta be responsible because you literally can put somebody else at risk, unknowingly, unintentionally. But that is something that I worried about. I really did. And thankfully, no one who was quarantined as a result of my contact with them got sick. But that stayed with me for the 14 days that they were quarantined. I was worried more about, did I cause harm to someone else than myself at that point.
I've got a quick question. What did you use for treatment?
Tylenol. I mean, that was about it. They told you to take Tylenol for the fever. There really wasn't anything else. You don't really have an appetite. You don't really want to do anything in some respects. Like my joke in the house was I slept like my 17-year-old son. I mean, it's like 14 hours, 20 hours of sleeping. Yeah.
Okay. Glad you got better.
Thanks.
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Can I be heard? Yeah.
I can barely hear you, PJ.
Yes, Mr. DeMarco, congratulations. It's wonderful that you can talk about this. Were you subject to contact tracing?
Yes.
And
Yep.
how did that happen?
So, I worked for the county. So once I was in the ER, actually when I was being evaluated in the ER, I called one of the people I work with. I let them know that I was in the ER to inform the people I was in contact with. Because really that week, the place I worked, we were very good in beginning the early stages of social distancing, right? Meetings became phone conferences. People stayed away from each other. You didn't walk into someone's office for no reason. So it was somewhat easy for me to identify the work people that I didn't go to meetings, right? I traveled less. I didn't go into my official work office. So there was about 14 people that, I could identify that were in close enough contact with me for a period of time that required to be quarantined. And they all got quarantined and they all complied with it. So that was done, like I said, it was started when I was being tested in the ER. People were notified.
Okay, and did you initiate that? You sound like you're quite a responsible individual, or was that something that was mandated to you?
No, I mean, at that, like I said, I had sat in enough meetings beforehand with health officers and people, because that's part of my job, to know what the requirements were, right? So,
that exactly was my point. It initiated with you, which I don't think is the norm. And it's one of the 6 principles that the governor has put into place on the road back to recovery, that contact tracing is really, really important. I was just wondering if anyone official had required that of you.
Yes. Well,
okay.
what I wound up, I didn't get to tell the whole story. The next day I got called by the county health officer. She went over my symptoms, and she had already was given through my work the list of people who I was in contact with, and they reached out to all of them and told them they had to be quarantined.
Mhm.
So, I mean, the process was in place. It did work, right? I mean, it was a little bit, and again, the whole system relies upon people's responsibility. It really does, right? If someone doesn't let you know they're feeling bad, there's no way to tell that unless they express it.
Yes. But once confirmed, then it is the responsibility further to alert others.
Correct.
So thank
Yes.
you. Thank
No,
you.
not a problem.
It's
Michael.
wonderful.
Excuse me, Michael, you're muted, Michael. Do you want to start asking or?
I just wanted to check in with Freeholder Director Robinson to see if she had any county update or.
Well, I'm not sure what has already been covered, so we
I
can
gave
just,
them the
if anyone
basic-
has any questions for me.
I gave them the basic plans about Colonial Park, about how you'll be metering traffic in and out of there.
I have nothing further. I figured that was the question of the day.
I actually do have a question for the Freeholder Director.
Yes.
I've been seeing the numbers on daily of the numbers of folks who've been tested at RVCC. And is there anything you can say, anything you can talk about in terms of those numbers? I mean, I would have thought, quite honestly, that there'd be more people getting tested. I mean, there were 48 people the other day, right? I would have thought that there'd be more people getting tested. Can you talk about that at all?
It's just a matter of them signing up for an appointment. So either the curve is flattening, and we don't know what we don't know. So maybe symptoms are mild and they're nursing themselves back to health, and don't feel they need to be tested. Those early on may have gone to any of the 2 FEMA sites. So we kind of joined late in the game with regards to testing. But all along, my concern was the ease of access for our residents. And so, and I think we're doing the right thing, practicing social distancing. The fact that we're not in a densely populated area as a Essex County or Bergen County certainly lends itself to us not having the numbers that we have.
Okay, thanks.
Michael, did you want to let the public?
Yep.
I
I have a few questions in the queue. One was maybe Township Manager Vornlocker, there's a question about the online transaction fee for property taxes, and if that fee is going to stand or be waived.
So,
sorry, the ice machine.
okay. So the answer is there's 2 different types of fees. When you pay with a check online through ACH, there's I think it's $1.05 per transaction. And then there's a percentage fee when you pay a bill, a tax bill or water bill online with a credit card. We don't have the authority, or we don't have the ability to remove that percentage surcharge. That's assessed by the credit card company. And to be honest with you, it would be something that when you talk about, if we were to reimburse someone the percentage fee for a tax bill, some of our quarterly tax bills are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars on properties. And I'm not saying that a corporation would pay with their credit card, but if they did, we would have to eat that in a tax bill. So we don't do that. It's a convenience, and we encourage people to pay their bills either through the mail or through their checking account through ACH, or you can also pay your tax bill by putting it in an envelope and dropping it in the drop box in front of the police station.
But using the ACH actually may be the cheapest way if you think about it. Okay, mail may be cheaper, 50 cents for the stamp and 5 cents for the envelope. okay, it costs you another 50 cents to go by the electronic means, but driving it there may cost you more than that. So I paid by electronic means this time, and it was quick and convenient.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And one question, this could be county or township, was with regard to the 50% parking lot. And someone was curious if those parking spaces were going to be staggered in terms of their use to promote social distancing when people are parking, or is it just going to close off half the parking lot?
So we thought of that at one point of saying, okay, everybody park at every other car. Don't make sure there's a space between you. There's no way to enforce that because the officer comes along and sees 3 cars parked in a row. Who was the first car there? Who was the other one there? It's a great idea conceptually, but Mr. Vornlocker, we ran it by Mr. Vornlocker, and he's got experience with these things. And we just decided on probably what's going to happen is at Middlebush Park, the first lot that you would come to, you have to take a right to get into it near the basketball courts. That's probably the one we're going to use, and we can monitor that a little better. I saw someone ask that question. It's a good general idea in theory, but in practicality, it's just difficult to work.
Yep. I have a question for Dr. Ravalli. So this is a question, Dr. Ravalli, about is there any consideration currently for when students return, whenever that may be, to have a plan for students who may have comorbid conditions or be immune, compromised, or have family members that are, and any other options for those students?
Sure. Well, obviously we're working on plans now. First off, let me just speak to reentry in general. We are waiting for an announcement as to what the governor's thoughts are with regard to return to school, first off. Second off, as a county, we've decided to take the initiative to put a framework together that would guide all of our schools as we reenter. And I just want to let folks know the kinds of things we're thinking about. Wellness in general, things that would address that particular question. So there's no easy answer.
You froze up there. You froze up there, John. Let me see if he.
He is. He's okay.
You're
All
back?
right. So
We
yes.
lost you there.
Lock me in. So yes, the reentry is being thought about, and we are working hard as a county. Actually, we've broadened this to a county initiative involving our executive county superintendent and all of the superintendents across our county. We're looking at things like wellness, facilities, governance, instruction, operations, technology, post-secondary. And what we first started to do was ask some of the kinds of questions that you just asked me. So we don't have those answers yet, but we are trying to think through those things as a county so that we come up with a framework that will allow us to safely come back. Will that mean social distancing? Likely. PPE likely. All of those kinds of things will be addressed. What they'll look like, we're not sure. And we all have similar challenges, busing kids to school, 750 kids in a lunch period. All of those kinds of things are big challenges that we have to overcome. So we wanted to work on that as a county. We started that work most recently with the anticipation that we're going to hear something from the governor next week or the week after. I believe he said the week after. So there is no direct answer to that particular question other than it's certainly something that we're thinking about. Safety is always front and on the top of our minds. So we certainly wouldn't want to put any kid in an uncomfortable situation or any parent in an uncomfortable situation. So we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that the confidence is at a very high level as we're returning students. And again, it's not going to be an easy task. Believe me when I tell you, we are beginning to list those questions, and there are a lot more questions than there are answers at this point. But we are going to work on the answers. And when we roll out a plan, it's going to be something that hopefully everybody has great confidence in, and that would then be across Somerset County, not just in Franklin. Kudos to my colleagues for taking the initiative to get together in this kind of format and begin to develop that framework along with me. So we're looking forward in the very near future to have some of those answers. But I do have an answer to another question that I don't know if you picked up on it, Michael, and it was about field trips. And the answer is yes, field trips are canceled for the balance of this year. Our teachers are reaching out and making that kind of contact as we speak, because we were staying 2 weeks ahead of this. But even if we were to return toward the end of the school year, we likely would be doing that in such a way that it wouldn't allow for us to be leaving the campus, obviously. So we took it upon ourselves to work with our teachers to cancel field trips for the balance of the year. We told our teachers they can begin to make tentative plans for the fall and beyond, and even some of our summer trips, because we do have some summer programs, although we don't know what the summer will bring either, right? And for that fact, we don't know what the fall will bring, but we don't want to not make the plans, so we're making tentative plans. But as far as this school year, 1920, we've instructed our teachers as recent, I think it was last week, at the end of the week, we instructed our teachers that we'd be canceling field trips for the balance of this year. So they're working on that as we speak. Okay?
All right, thank you, Dr. Ravelli. And then there's three other questions, Township Manager Hornlocker. One was, actually there's a suggestion that made me think of something else, but with regard to, somebody mentioned repainting the parking lot. But one thing I wanted to add to it was the possibility of something we do used to do at Canal Fest, but just Xing out every other spot with spray, with the kind of that spray paint.
So understand there are hundreds of parking spaces in just Middlebush Park alone. It's not practical, it's not cost effective, and it's not necessary. And I just think that's, I understand the direction that viewer was looking to go, but unfortunately that's not practical. But the other issue is that while you look at social distancing in a place like a public park, people don't all generally come to the park at the same time and leave at the same time. So social distancing is just accomplished by the fact that you're getting into your car and not generally having conflict with the person next to you because the parking lot is so big. So I think that's one thing that we just have to take into consideration as we move forward. I saw one question about we'll be installing plexiglass in the municipal building. So the answer to that is that most public-facing offices in our municipal building are already separated by plexiglass or safety glass. Certainly in the police public safety building they are, and the tax collection booth and the tax collector's office, the assessor's office, the clerk's office, the construction office already are separated from the public by glass. For the few that are not, and then for certain employee areas where employees work closely together, we've already toured all of our buildings and determined where plexiglass is necessary to separate the public from our employees. For instance, the counter in the animal shelter, or the counter in the engineering department, or the counter in the HR department. So those are generally not heavily visited, well, the animal shelter, but the others are not generally heavily visited by the public, but we're still going to have them in place before the building is open to the public.
And so one small thing bears repetition, but there was a question about the requirement for masks in the parks. You answered that earlier, but if you want to.
I did, and I noticed that someone actually, Mrs. Troutman gave a very good answer. She copied and pasted the order, so that was perfect. But the answer is that the wearing of masks is not mandated. It is a strongly suggested item in the executive order from the governor. And likewise, it's the same in the order from the township for township parks and for the county and county parks, because I said earlier, it is mandated in the executive order that municipal and county parks follow specifically the guidelines spelled out in the executive order from the state, so that there's no deviation between municipal, county, and state parks as to what's permitted, what's not permitted, and what's, in this particular case, suggested. And that's that the wearing of masks is strongly suggested. And the governor spoke about that in his press conference today. And there are a number of legal reasons, I believe, at this point, why the wearing of masks generally in public is not being mandated. There are a number of legal actions being taken across the United States regarding it. And I think that everyone is taking a very cautious approach to mandating wearing of masks in the general public, not in confined areas like grocery stores and essential service locations.
And Dr. Mayor Kramer encourages you and begs you to wear a mask.
And a question about Franklin Day.
So the question about Franklin Day, so I can talk about a couple different events. So I made an announcement at the council meeting on Tuesday that there will be no Memorial Day parade and no Memorial Day service at the Veterans Monument in front of the municipal building. However, I have a Zoom meeting on Monday with recreation staff and Mr. LaCourte to talk about how we're going to do a virtual Memorial Day service on Memorial Day. So that's how we'll do Memorial Day. We are not going to have Independence Day fireworks. However, we still hope to have fireworks at some reason to celebrate sometime between now and December 31st. And we're going to take it one day at a time, and we're going to continue to look towards having some community celebration at some point in 2020, and it will be ended with fireworks, and it might be New Year's Eve, but if that's what it comes down to, then that's what it will be. The fireworks vendors being very cooperative in rescheduling that event. As far as the Franklin Day Festival is concerned, there's a couple different issues with that, and what we're looking at right now is not canceling at this point. It's not scheduled till September. And we'll continue to evaluate as we move forward as to whether or not large gatherings will be permitted in September. However, we are going to scale back the fundraising. So the event, if it is held, will not be as large as it has been in previous years. We feel that it's probably not appropriate to fundraise for that type of event when we have a food bank that's going without proper funding to feed people in our hard times that we're on right now. And so rather than go to corporate sponsors for a festival, we think that those corporate sponsors would better serve the community if they donated money to the food bank and like causes.
If you have money to give it to the food bank. Absolutely.
So that's the answer. That's the answer on Franklin Day Festival. We hope to have something. We do, but we also have to be cautious. And so the planning, as you know, Michael, is very very intense and laborious and time demanding. And so we're going to just look at it to be perhaps a small event rather than the large scale event that it's been in the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you, Township Manager Vornlocker. And Mr. Mayor, I think, can we open up just for a few more questions from the press to any panelists that haven't been asked?
Well, I noticed there was one question for Mr. DeMarco about whether he was admitted or what was the hospital time there, or did you just go home from the ER?
I was in the ER for about 4 hours. I was given the option of if I wanted to be admitted or could go home because you would understand this, my blood oxygen went as low as 90, 92. So that was a little concerning. By the time I left, it kind of stabilized at like 92, 93. So at that time, there was, and there still is, right, a fear of, going to a hospital because that's where, the virus is, right? Because it's, so I went home and just was very mindful what the doctor told me to look forward, worsening of symptoms. So.
Good. Michael, I noticed a question that maybe you didn't notice or maybe you didn't purposely ask. I'm going to hit it head on. Someone was asking if the director receives a pension besides her pay. It is my understanding she does. Mr. Vornlocker, how many people applied for the job of Public Safety Director?
45.
How many people did we interview?
Oh, geez. I'm not even going to get into that, Mayor. It's a personnel issue. I interviewed a lot of people, not all 45, but many of them.
And council interviewed.
Wait, let me answer another question before it's asked. And every single applicant had at least 20 to 25 years of police experience and would have been collecting a pension to fill the position of police director.
Because that's the kind of person you're going to get, is someone with experience who has spent that amount of time, who has gotten a pension.
And I don't want to sound defensive, but the truth is that when you collect a pension, you're collecting a pension that you paid 10% of your salary into for the length of your career, and it's a pension that you earned. It has nothing to do with the salary you now earn in a different position.
And I know that many of our pensioners come where they already have health benefits, so we don't have to pay benefits. We don't have to pay pension. And the bottom line of that is, well, I want to get someone for as inexpensively as possible so that I don't have to pay their pension is good. And if I don't have to pay their health care, that's good. But what I really want out of anyone I hire, and let's be all clear, this hire is the manager's hire, but everything's kind of comes under the council. But whoever we hire, I want them to be the best. And frankly, and I'm not blowing smoke, yeah, she was just the best interview, the best applicant, and we are thrilled to have her. So I don't care if she has a pension. I don't care about the other things. She's the best for the job. She's going to do the best for Franklin, and that's why we hired her.
I'd just like to add one more thing to that, because I think sometimes there's a misperception about this, and so maybe I can clear up one issue. People like the public safety director are not enrolled in a second pension. There is no second retirement fund being amassed in this second stage of her career. This is without a pension, and that also means that between 15 and 20% of her salary is not being paid as a pension contribution. It's not. There is no second pension in New Jersey. Once you retire from one job and receive a pension, you can no longer be enrolled in a second pension.
So there's a couple of comments. One, just with, and I answered it earlier on the thread, but Tour de Franklin is not canceled, but it has been reformatted. You can find all that information on the franklinfoodbank.org website. Also, there's a question about any municipal level assistance or support for small businesses.
Well, so the support for local businesses comes from the state of New Jersey and the federal government. Certainly, when we talk about the municipal budget, there's not a great deal of money available for funding of that type to businesses. That's generally done by not even at the county level, but at the state and federal level. And there's a great number of assistance grants and loans and opportunities, and they're all detailed on the resources for businesses on the township website.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
there was the question from Nick D'Amiglio about whether or not we could encourage people to hold clothing donations for the Franklin graduation committee, project graduation, was it?
Right. So I understand that a lot of people are doing house cleaning and they're coming up with a bunch of clothes and putting them by those clothes bins, and they're piling up around them, kind of making a mess. There's normally a clothing drive by Nick D'Amiglio that does support Project Graduation. I'm sure we don't know yet whether Project Graduation will be or not, but he has requested that people hold on to those clothes for a little while so we can see what we're going to do.
It seemed like part of the issue was also that the food drops, the bins that are in town are not getting cleared out, and there's a lot of bags just getting left out in the rain. So it might be, the suggestion was that it might be a better use if people can hold on to them for a little while. Is there any reminder or encouragement, Mr. Mayor, that you wanted to give anyone with regard to the census?
So I was actually just going to say it, but if the mayor wants to do it, I know that this weekend is very special as far as electronic.
Maybe you should both do it.
Go, Mayor.
Well, I mean, gee, how should I answer that? Fill out your census. And it is really important. It relates to what's going on now. You know, money's going to be allocated by population. And if you're not counted, then you don't count. And that money won't come to us. What was special about what's coming up? Just the new month? How many you get? What were you talking about, Mr. Vornlocker?
I said, so I received an email this morning that this particular weekend is being identified as something along the lines of electronic reporting weekend, and that they're encouraging all people to get on their computers and fill out the census paperwork so that they can get themselves counted. I was just trying to scroll through to see where I could find the email. Unfortunately, I have about 150 today, so I wasn't able to find it quickly.
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yes, sir.
we also have been reminding parents when we send out our blast message of the importance of that. And even as recently as last night when we sent out our blast message, we reminded people to make sure that they're filling out their census. And I will also make it a point, our principals are still in contact, obviously, with our families via Sunday blast message. I'll make it a point to tell them to continue to remind families, and whatever they can do to remind their teachers to remind families as well, as we've been doing. So I just wanted to let you know that we're making some efforts there to support the township.
Great.
Thank you, Dr. Ravalli. Do any members of the press have any other questions they wanted to ask before we sign off? We're going on 8:20, so we got to wrap it up pretty soon.
I do. I just had a question either for the manager or the director. There was mention made of congregation in the park or in the parks. If people are seen to be congregating in the park, then certain actions will be taken. What's the threshold? I mean, how many people makes a congregation?
Well, so I'll speak for my opinion, and then the public safety director can speak for hers, but it could be two. If two people who are just standing having a chat, who are not related to each other, and they're within 6 feet of each other, then that's two people congregating, in my opinion. And I think that those people should be told, you need to spread out. I mean, I've done it personally when I've seen people do it. I've done it in the municipal building with employees that sometimes forget. As the public safety director said earlier, this is a learning experience for all of us. And so a group congregating could be 2, it could be 20. I think every circumstance has to be taken on its own face value, and not be just categorized as with a specific number or a specific manner in which it's being done. So that's my opinion.
So sounds like
TJ, you're muted. Bill, are you good?
No, because that was not much of an answer. I mean, people are watching this and they're wondering, okay, if I go out with 2 people, am I going to get nailed? Or is there like a...
Well, that's my answer. The answer is that the guidance that comes from the CDC and from the state of New Jersey and from the federal government is that the only people who should be within 6 feet of each other are people who fall into certain categories: family members, romantic interests. You can see it. It's in everything that's issued by the state of New Jersey and by the federal government. So if it is, you're not supposed to be out in groups of friends. You're not supposed to be congregating with people that you're not related to. So if there are two people that have no specific connection to each other, who are stopped in a parking lot or on a sidewalk and having a chat, and they're 1 or 2 feet away from each other, that would, to me, constitute people who are congregating and not abiding by social distancing standards.
What if
I don't know how much clearer that can be.
wearing masks?
Well, it doesn't matter if you're wearing masks. You're still supposed to be 6 feet apart.
Yeah, two people wearing masks 2 feet apart, that's not social distancing. The masks are not perfect.
Okay, well, that's an answer.
Well,
Okay.
The rest
Thank you,
of the
Bill. I'm
question-
gonna, PJ, just, thank you, Bill. PJ, go
Yes,
ahead.
The rest of the question is, how do you know who's family and who isn't?
You ask.
You walk up to people and say, are you
Police
family?
officers will ask. There,
They
you
will go up to
that's
every
how it's
grouping of
enforced.
2
The
or more.
enforcement agency is the police department.
Okay. and
They do,
are
they do
sufficient-
have the, they are, have the power and authority to go up and ask those questions.
so let me comment on that. So I think what happens if people are not abiding by being 6 feet or more apart, the officers are allowed to approach them and say, you know, a reminder, you should be 6 feet apart, social distancing. And you said if they're wearing a mask, the rule is still 6 feet apart, whether they're wearing a mask or not. So they can approach them and remind them, like I said before, we're going to talk to citizens and give them warnings about social distancing. But, you know, that it is what it is. Those are the rules. We don't, you know, we're enforcing them. It is the governor's executive order. It is the CDC's recommendations. We're just trying to reduce the spread.
Yeah, and
eliminate
I'm
the
totally in concurrence with that. My question had to do with how are you determining who's family and who isn't?
We will talk to them. We will
Okay.
talk to them.
Thank you, PJ.
Thank
Malik,
you.
do you have anything?
Yeah, I just had one question. As far as long-term care facilities in the township, is there any coordination between the state, county, and local government in addressing some of the issues that we're having there? Because over 20% of the cases actually came from a long-term care facility within the town, and the mortality rate there is also extremely high as well. So I don't know if there's any coordination with any groups that we have that are helping address some of those issues, or is there any kind of support that we're given? Because it seems to me that those are the hot spots in our town.
So I'll address that. So there's a couple different things, and there's some misperceptions about long-term care facilities. One, and I see the press doing it now often, they're utilizing the numbers that are posted on the dashboard that's on the state website to use in their calculations on numbers related to the long-term care facilities. The numbers that are posted on the state dashboard for long-term care facilities, there's a spreadsheet that you can download. Those numbers are a fluid number. They have the ability to change from day to day. It's not an aggregate number since the beginning. It's as far as the positive cases, it's the number of positive cases they have on that particular day. So it's apples and oranges when you use it compared to our count or the county's count on the total number in a town. So it's fuzzy math that doesn't work. That's number one. Number two, the answer is yes. There's daily communication between the state of New Jersey and the county health department and the county office of emergency management and all the long-term care facilities in the township. And the township's office of emergency management is in regular communication with them as well. When they identify a need through the county reporting, because that report is shared with us daily, that if there's a need for instance, there's a need for surgical masks, or there's a need for, and we've announced this before, a need for our hospital gowns, or a need for personnel, because now the county has entered into a relationship with a staffing company that can provide healthcare workers on short-term notice. So that's the answer as far as communication is concerned. As far as the deaths that are attributed to the long-term care facilities, I think that if you check for any area that's been hit by the COVID-19 disease with any significant numbers, you will see that the long-term care facilities are suffering the same type of percentages as far as fatalities as we are here in Franklin or in Somerset County or in the state of New Jersey for that matter. I just read an article this morning that in Maryland, which is now starting to come to a peak, they're behind us in the numbers, but continue to grow. In Maryland, the number I think was 46% of the fatalities in the state of Maryland are attributed to long-term care facilities, which is in line with what New Jersey is at this particular point. I think that it's upsetting, but they are a vulnerable and at-risk part of our population based on all of the issues that have put them in a long-term care facility. So we are in communication. It's unfortunate that that's the circumstances that exist.
Thank you, Township Manager. So if there are no other questions, I think we'll move to close the meeting. But before we do, I wanted to remind, and I'll give it over to you, Mr. Mayor, in a second, unless you have something beforehand. You look like
we might be heading in the same direction, that there have been 80 people who have died.
Mhm.
There are 80 lights, I presume. They've gone up on the gazebo. And thank you, Michael, for doing that. It is not a number. You know, on my Facebook page, I do a lot of math, and I constantly remind myself and try to remind others, the math is interesting and the math can guide us, but it's not just numbers. They're people. And we've lost 80 people, and we will lose more. Right now, you know, and look, I see the comments that are going on Facebook and the arguments and people grandstanding. Today we hit over 1 million people infected, and 62,000 people have died. 62,000 is an important number. That's how many people die roughly in a year from influenza. So we've done that in just a few months. This is a serious problem. This is not a time for sport. There's 80 people who have died in Franklin. We are doing everything we can to keep social distancing, to keep people alive. The manager, I think, gets 3 hours sleep a night. I think he lays in bed for 6 hours, but gets 3 hours of sleep at night because he's thinking, what else can we do? I'm doing the same thing, thinking, what else can we do? We have limitations of what our government can do, what our form of government can do. We have limitations of getting PPE. We have limitations of the science. And you can ask a lot of questions about, well, how do you know this? How do you know that? Why are you wearing, are you supposed to wear a mask, not supposed to wear a mask? Only wear a mask once because it doesn't work as well the next time you wear it, but you don't have more masks, so you have to wear it more. We have all of these things before us. But we have to remember 80 people have died in Franklin. More people will die. That's what we're trying to prevent. And I guess I would just like a moment of silence for those 80 people and all the people that they touched, who they're not going to be around again. So a moment of silence, please. Thank you, Michael. You can wrap it up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll, of course, record this to YouTube for those who don't use Facebook, although the recording will be up on your Facebook page at Mayor Phil Kramer. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to our guests and to those who offered questions who are listening. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Be safe.
Good night.
Well, Franklin.